Of unit fractions. We've been talking a lot about fractions and identifying what unit fractions are, so now we're going to take it the next step. In this lesson and in this chapter, instead of adding with fractions or subtracting with fractions like we did last chapter, we're going to start multiplying with fractions. So let's take a look at what multiples of unit fractions means and how we figure out how to decompose these fractions. Okay, we're going to start with the fraction 5/6. And last chapter, what we did with a fraction like 5/6 was we broke it up to find an equation that would give us the sum that would equal 5/6 using unit fractions. So for example, 5/6, we would decompose this fraction and we would have 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6. And we knew that when we added all these unit fractions up, these 1/6 unit fractions up, that our sum would be equal to 5/6. In this chapter, we're now going to look at 5/6 and think about it as a multiplication problem. How many 1/6 do I need in order to get to 5/6? Well, if I'm starting with 5/6, my numerator is 5, and a unit fraction always has a 1 in the numerator. So I'm going to need 5 unit fractions. I'm going to need 5 1/6 in order to get to 5/6. So we took our fraction 5/6 and we wrote 5/6 as a whole number times a unit fraction. We needed 5 unit fractions in order to get to 5/6. Let's take a look at another problem just like this. All right, we have the fraction 4/9. And if we were to write it with addition and the sum of those unit fractions needed to equal 4/9, we would write 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9. Oops. 1/9. So now we're going to write 4/9 as a whole number times a unit fraction. I look at my numerator and it's a 4. That means I need 4 unit fractions in order to get to 4/9, and I'm going to multiply it times my unit fraction of 1/9. And that's it. That's all there is to changing a fraction into a multiplication problem where we're taking a whole number and multiplying it times our unit fraction. Now, part of this chapter as well, or part of this lesson as well, is taking a look at multiples of unit fractions. We've talked about multiples in the past, and some of the things that we've talked about with multiples are like skip counting. So if we had the number 3 and we needed to find multiples of 3, we would skip count. We'd go 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, etc. Okay, that'd go on and on and on. So we know that when we're finding our multiples, we're just going up or increasing by whatever number we're asked to start with. When we're doing this with our fractions, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look at our numerator, and that's going to be the only thing that changes. So when we're finding our multiples of our unit fractions, let's say we have the unit fraction 1/8, the only thing that's going to change is our numerator, and we're going to increase by whatever our numerator tells us to. In this case, it's 1. So we'd have 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, etc. And that would go on. And that's as simple as it is. When we're finding our multiples of our unit fractions, we're just going to increase by 1. And our numerator is the only thing that's changing. Let's do one more just like that. If we had 1/6 and we needed to find our next 5 multiples of 1/6, we'd start with 1/6, and then we go to 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, 5/6, and 6/6. That's it. Now you might think that's fine and dandy and that's super easy, but what does this look like in a word problem? Because those are usually what you see in your assessments, and those are really what trick us up a little bit more. Let's take a look at a word problem. 8 loaves of blueberry bread. He's making 8 loaves. He uses a 1/2 cup of blueberries in each loaf. How many cups of blueberries does he use for 8 loaves? Well, he uses a half a cup for each loaf. So a half a cup for the first one, a half a cup for the second one, a half a cup for the third one, a half a cup for the fourth one, and the fifth, and the sixth, and the seventh, and the eighth. So when we keep adding those half cups, we're really just finding our multiples of our fraction. So the first cup he uses 1/2, then he uses 2 halves, then 3 halves, then 4 halves, then 5 halves, 6 halves, 7 halves, and 8 halves. So when we look at our numerator, it tells us, well, which loaf of bread we're on, but we can also count our multiples to figure out what the 8th loaf would be. So this is our first, our second loaf, our third loaf, our fourth loaf, 5th loaf, 6th loaf, 7th loaf, and 8th loaf. Our 8th loaf of bread, we'll need 8 halves cups of blueberries. So you